The sound of the slap echoed through the glittering ballroom, louder than the string quartet, louder than the gasps that followed. My head snapped to the side, the sting burning hot across my cheek. For a moment, the world tilted, the crystal chandeliers blurred above me, and I felt like I was standing in the wrong life. Around us, the crowd at the engagement party froze, their champagne glasses hovering midair as if no one dared move. My assailant, a woman in a sequined dress who had always looked at me like I was beneath her, smirked with satisfaction. "How dare you show your face here?" she hissed, her voice dripping venom for everyone to hear. My throat tightened as I fought back tears. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but humiliation choked the words before they could form. I wasn't just humiliated, I was exposed, stripped bare under the gaze of people who had never accepted me. My fingers trembled as I lifted a hand to my cheek, the heat from her slap radiating through me. "Say something," she sneered, leaning closer, her breath sharp with expensive perfume. "Or are you too ashamed to admit what you really are?" I staggered back, my body searching for an exit that didn't exist. Then, a chair scraped sharply behind me, commanding the room's attention. He was there, the CEO, my husband, his tall frame cut through the crowd like a storm breaking. He closed the distance in seconds, his expression a mask of cold fury. And when his voice came, it was a roar that shook the floor beneath us. "Don't ever touch my wife again." The room went silent, so quiet I could hear the faint clinking of the chandelier above us. His words hung in the air like a verdict no one dared challenge. My heart pounded against my ribs as he stepped closer, placing himself squarely between me and the woman who had struck me. His presence was overwhelming, his shoulders tense, jaw set like carved stone. "Apologize," he said, his voice low but laced with danger. She faltered, her confidence crumbling as every eye in the room bore down on her. I didn't mean," she stammered, her voice shaking now, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "You humiliated my wife in front of everyone," he continued, his tone steady and cold. "If you think I'll let that slide, you're mistaken." She stepped back, her heels scraping against the marble floor as the crowd parted around her like she was contagious. "I'm sorry," she muttered finally, though the words were hollow, bitter. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he turned to me, his hand reaching out as though to touch my face, but stopping just shy of my bruised cheek. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, his voice a stark contrast to the thunder moments ago. My lips parted, but no words came out. I just shook my head faintly, overwhelmed by the shift in his tone. Around us, whispers erupted, speculation spreading like wildfire through the guests. But I didn't hear them. All I could focus on was the way he was looking at me, like I was someone worth defending, someone who mattered. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel completely invisible. His hand hovered near my cheek for a moment longer, as though he was afraid even the softest touch might hurt me. "Come with me," he said finally, his voice quieter now, but it carried an authority that left no room for refusal. I hesitated, glancing at the sea of onlookers who pretended not to stare. Their eyes burned with curiosity and judgment, and my instinct was to run and hide. But before I could take a single step, he reached for my hand. His fingers closed gently but firmly around mine, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. The room seemed to close in as he led me through the crowd. Guests stepped aside quickly, some whispering, others averting their gazes entirely. I could feel the woman who had slapped me watching, her anger radiating from across the room, but I didn't dare look back. My pulse thundered as we exited the ballroom and stepped into a quiet hallway. Only then did he release my hand and turn to face me, his expression softening just enough to let me see the worry behind his eyes. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" he asked, his tone a mixture of frustration and something deeper, something I couldn't name. My lips parted, but the words caught in my throat. How could I explain that I was used to being treated, like I didn't belong. That this slap was only the latest reminder? I dropped my gaze to the floor, ashamed, but he stepped closer, lifting my chin with gentle insistence. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low but firm. "No one will ever hurt you again. Not while I'm here." I could still feel the warmth of his hand under my chin as he stepped back, his eyes locked on mine. "Stay here," he instructed, glancing down the hallway toward the ballroom. "I'll handle the rest." Panic gripped me, sharp and sudden. "Wait, don't leave me alone," I blurted, my voice trembling more than I wanted it to. He paused, his expression softening for the briefest moment before he shook his head. "I won't be far," he promised, though his tone carried the weight of unfinished business. I watched him disappear around the corner, my pulse hammering in my ears. The silence of the hallway pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating after the chaos of the ballroom. I leaned against the cool wall, trying to steady my breathing, but my thoughts were spiraling. Why had he defended me so fiercely? Our marriage was complicated, more arrangement than love story. We had barely learned how to coexist without walls between us. And yet, tonight he had called me his wife in front of everyone, with a conviction that didn't feel like pretense. My fingers brushed the faint sting, still lingering on my cheek. For years, I had endured humiliation in silence, but the way he had looked at me, furious, protective, had shaken something loose inside me. Suddenly, the faint hum of voices reached me from the ballroom. Sharper this time. Someone was speaking loudly, defiantly, and it wasn't him. My breath caught as I realized who it was. The woman who had slapped me. She was stirring the crowd, her venom laced with lies. Fear twisted in my gut as I stepped forward, straining to hear. Whatever she was saying, it was dangerous, and it was about me. Her voice carried through the corridor like poison, clear and deliberate. "She's manipulating him," she declared, and a ripple of murmurs followed. "You all saw how she clung to him. She's using this marriage to climb higher, to take what doesn't belong to her." My chest tightened, every word stabbing deeper than the slap ever could. I pressed closer to the doorway, careful to remain unseen, my heart pounding as the accusations grew sharper. "She came from nothing," she continued, her tone dripping with disdain. "Do you really think someone like her deserves to be part of this family? She's nothing but a stain on his name." Laughter from one of the guests made my stomach twist. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. Then I heard his voice, low but cutting through the noise like a blade. "Enough." The room fell silent instantly. I stepped closer to the edge of the doorframe, my breath shallow as I watched him walk to the center of the ballroom. His presence commanded the entire room's attention, his expression dark with barely restrained anger. "I warned you once," he said, turning to face the woman who had slapped me. "And now you're questioning my wife's place in my life." His voice was steady, but the steel in it made even the boldest guest flinch. She faltered, her confidence wavering under the weight of his gaze, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. "I'm just telling the truth," she snapped. My pulse raced as I realized he was seconds away from exploding. But what terrified me even more was the thought that he might have to choose between me and his entire family. He stepped closer to her, his shadow swallowing her defiance. An entire room held its breath. "You call that the truth?" he asked, his voice so low and sharp it made even me shiver from the hallway. "Let me give you mine." He glanced around the ballroom, his gaze sweeping over the gathered guests, each one shrinking back under the intensity of his stare. "This woman," he said, pointing toward the one who had slapped me, "has spent years believing her name gives her the right to humiliate others. Tonight, she dared to lay her hand on my wife. That ends now." Murmurs broke out, but he raised his voice, silencing them. "I won't allow anyone, family or not, to question her place beside me." My breath caught, my heart twisting painfully in my chest. He wasn't just defending me. He was declaring something bigger, something that felt terrifyingly final. If anyone here, he continued, his gaze icy and unwavering, believes she doesn't belong, you can leave. And if you think I'll change my mind, you're wrong. Because I will protect her, even if it means cutting ties with all of you. Gasps echoed through the room as the weight of his words settled like a storm. The woman who had slapped me stumbled back, her confidence shattered. But instead of apologizing, she turned her glare toward the door, toward where I stood frozen. This is what she wanted all along, she spat. She's tearing this family apart. My knees felt weak as I realized all eyes were about to turn toward me. And then someone behind me touched my shoulder. I spun around so quickly that I nearly lost my balance. Standing behind me was his younger cousin, a man I had only seen in passing, a quiet figure who always seemed to hover at the edges of family gatherings. His expression was unreadable as he steadied me with a gentle grip. "You shouldn't be out here," he whispered, his tone calm but urgent. "They're all looking for you now." My throat went dry, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to do." He glanced toward the ballroom, with the CEO's voice still carried like distant thunder. "If you don't go in there, they'll twist this against you," he said softly. "But if you do, be prepared. They're going to make you feel like you don't belong." My chest tightened at the truth in his words. I wanted to turn and run, to disappear from this suffocating mansion and never come back. But deep down, I knew running would only prove them right. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, searching his face for a reason. His jaw tightened, and for a brief second, his eyes flickered with something almost protective. "Because he believes in you," he said simply, "and he's about to go to war for you. Don't let him stand there alone." His words hit me harder than I expected. My fingers trembled as I reached up to touch the faint mark still burning on my cheek. My knees felt weak, but I nodded, straightening my back as best I could. "Okay," I whispered, even though fear coiled tight in my stomach. And together, we stepped toward the open doorway, into the storm waiting inside. The room seemed to shrink as I stepped through the doorway, every head turning in unison. My heels clicked softly against the polished floor, the only sound in the suffocating silence. I could feel the heat of their judgmental stares, their whispers curling like smoke around me. My hands trembled at my sides, but I forced myself to keep my chin high. The CEO's eyes found me instantly, his expression softening for the briefest moment before it hardened again, a shield for us both. "Come here," he said, his voice deep and steady. I obeyed, my legs heavy as if each step took all my strength. When I reached him, he extended his hand, not demanding but offering. My breath hitched as I slipped my fingers into his, the warmth of his palm grounding me amidst the storm. Gasps rippled through the guests, as though our simple connection was an act of rebellion. "You think she's tearing this family apart," he said suddenly, turning his gaze to the woman who had slapped me. "No, it's your arrogance, your cruelty, your fear of change that's dividing us, and I won't tolerate it anymore." She recoiled, her face twisting with anger. "She's manipulating you. Can't you see?" His hand tightened around mine, his voice sharp as a blade. "The only thing I see is the truth. She is my wife, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." The air crackled with tension, every word a blow that left no one unscathed. My heart pounded, my throat dry, but for the first time I felt the urge to speak, not for him but for myself. I drew in a shaky breath, my heart hammering as I turned to face the room full of hostile eyes. My instinct was to shrink behind him, to let his presence shield me, but something inside me refused. This wasn't just about enduring humiliation anymore. It was about reclaiming the voice I'd lost long before tonight. "I know many of you don't like me," I began, my voice quiet but steady. The whispers stopped immediately. "I didn't grow up with your privilege or your name, and I'll never fit into your perfect picture of what his wife should be. But that doesn't give anyone the right to put their hands on me." My gaze shifted to the woman who had slapped me. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. You think I'm here for money or power, or to take something that doesn't belong to me, I continued, my fingers trembling slightly in his grasp. But the truth is, I never wanted any of this. I only ever wanted to be treated with the same respect you give each other. The CEO's hand tightened around mine, silent encouragement giving me strength. I'm not leaving, I said finally, my voice ringing louder now, echoing through the ballroom. Not because of pride and not because I need your approval, but because I won't let any of you decide my worth ever again. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time I felt truly seen, and as I met her glare across the room, I realized this fight was only beginning, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Not with him by my side. The room erupted like a storm breaking after too much silence. Voices rose all at once. Accusations, defenses, frantic whispers, all clashing together until I could barely hear myself think. The CEO stepped slightly in front of me, his arm instinctively shielding me as his uncle, a towering man with a booming voice, slammed his fist on the table. This marriage is a mistake, he barked, his face red with fury. She's an outsider. She will ruin everything we've built. Others nodded, emboldened by his outburst. She's already dividing the family, someone muttered, and another added. You're blinded by emotion. You can't lead us like this. My heart clenched at their words, but I kept my chin high, refusing to shrink back into silence. He didn't falter either. You think I care about your approval, he said, his voice low but commanding enough to quiet the chaos. His gaze swept the room, sharp and unrelenting. The only thing ruining this family is your arrogance. You've mistaken tradition for control, respect for fear. That ends tonight. Gasps rippled through the guests as he stepped forward, his presence so strong it felt like the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. I will protect my wife, he continued, every word clear, deliberate. And if any of you believe you can threaten her, understand this. I'd rather burn this entire legacy to the ground than watch her be hurt again. The room froze. No one dared speak, but the tension was palpable. And in that charged silence, I realized the fight had just escalated beyond me. It was now a war for everything he stood for. The uncle's face darkened, his pride too bruised to let the CEO's words go unchallenged. You'd burn this family's legacy for her, he spat, pointing a shaking finger in my direction. Then you're not the leader we thought you were. The air grew heavier as more family members shifted uncomfortably, some nodding in agreement, others avoiding eye contact altogether. I felt the weight of their disdain pressing against me, but before I could speak, he stepped forward again, his voice unwavering. If protecting her makes me unfit to lead, then so be it, he said firmly, because a family that humiliates and breaks the people it claims to love is no family at all. The uncle slammed his hand on the table once more, this time holding up a folder stuffed with documents. You think your words can protect her? These will, he thundered. My stomach dropped as I recognized my name on the top page, highlighted like a warning. We've already filed the paperwork to remove you from the company board, he revealed, his voice triumphant. And once that's done, neither of you will have any power here. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers, but I couldn't hear them over the pounding of my own heart. He didn't flinch, though I saw the tension tightening his jaw. So this was your plan all along, he said, his voice a dangerous calm. The uncle smirked. It's the only way to save this family from her. My breath caught as I realized the stakes had just shifted completely. They weren't just trying to destroy me. They were willing to destroy him too. The uncle's smirk burned into me like a brand. But the CEO stepped forward with a calm that was almost more terrifying than anger. If you think I'm afraid of losing your title, you're wrong, he said, his voice steady, unshaken by the threat. You can strip me of the board, of the company, of everything you think defines me. but you will never take my ability to choose who I stand beside. He turned slightly toward me, his gaze locking with mine for a heartbeat that felt endless. And I will always choose her. Gasps rippled through the room, but he didn't waver. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit and pulled out a sealed envelope. Since you're so eager to expose secrets, let's put everything on the table. He placed it on the head of the table, the sound echoing like a gavel. This, he continued, is proof of everything you've done, your embezzlement, your backroom deals, your manipulation of the family trust. If you want to ruin me, you'll go down first. The uncle's face blanched. The smirk wiped clean as panic flickered behind his eyes. You wouldn't dare, he growled, but his voice lacked conviction. Try me, the CEO shot back. The room went utterly silent, the tension so thick it was suffocating. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I stepped closer to him, instinctively seeking his strength. He glanced at me, his voice softening only for a moment. This is bigger than us now, he murmured. But whatever happens next, I need you to trust me. The room was still, the kind of stillness that came right before everything shattered. My hand tightened around his as I felt the stares of everyone around us, judging, calculating, waiting. The uncle's jaw worked furiously as he looked at the envelope on the table, his knuckles white. You think you can threaten me? He spat, though his voice cracked slightly. If you release whatever's in there, you'll bring this entire family down. The CEO didn't even blink. Then maybe it's time this family faced the consequences of its actions, he said, his voice a controlled storm. Because I won't let your greed and cruelty dictate our future any longer. My breath caught. Our future. The words burned in my chest, equal parts hope and terror. The uncle's gaze darted around the table, searching for allies, but the silence was deafening. No one dared support him now. He slammed his hand on the table again, more out of desperation than authority. You'd throw away everything for her? He demanded, gesturing at me as though I were the disease infecting his world. For someone who doesn't even understand what's at stake. The CEO stepped closer to him, his presence radiating quiet power. You're right about one thing, he said coldly. She doesn't understand what's at stake because she doesn't think in terms of money and power the way you do. She's not poisoned by it. That's exactly why she's the best thing that's ever happened to this family. Gasps erupted again, and my knees weakened under the weight of his words. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was being fought for. The uncle's face twisted, his pride battling the fear flickering in his eyes. You think they'll follow you after this? He hissed, his voice barely concealing the tremor beneath. You've lost control. But the CEO didn't waver. He released my hand only to place the damning envelope back into my grasp, turning to face the entire room. No, he said firmly, his voice carrying with absolute authority. I haven't lost control. I've finally taken it back. He looked at each person at the table, his gaze unwavering. I know some of you may side with him, may think his vision of this family is the one to preserve. But I'm done preserving rot just because it's familiar. I won't let this house continue to crush anyone who doesn't fit its mold. His words struck like lightning, breaking the silent fear that had governed this family for years. I felt the weight of the envelope in my hands, the proof of every lie and betrayal. He looked at me, his voice softening but still firm. This isn't just my fight, he said, locking eyes with me. It's ours. If you want, we'll walk away right now and never look back. But if you're ready to stand with me, we'll make sure they can never hurt us again. My breath hitched as the room fell into an expectant silence. My heart raced with the enormity of the choice before me. I looked at the uncle, at the fearful faces around the table, and then back at the man who had stood for me when I couldn't. My voice shook as I finally answered. I tightened my grip on the envelope, feeling its weight like the beating of my own heart. All eyes were on me now, the outsider, the one they thought would break under pressure. My chest rose and fell as I looked at the uncle, his glare dripping with contempt, then at the man standing beside me, unwavering, offering me strength without a single word. "I've spent my entire life believing I didn't have a voice," I said quietly, but the stillness in the room made my words echo. "Tonight that ends." I stepped forward, my knees steady despite the storm inside me. "You think I'm here to take something from you," I continued, meeting each pair of eyes without flinching. "But I'm not. I'm here to take back my dignity, my place beside the man who chose me, not because of what I could give him, but because of who I am." A collective gasp rose as I held the envelope high, the symbol of every secret they'd tried to bury. Then, slowly, I placed it back into the CEO's hand. "We do this together," I said, my voice firm, unshaken. His eyes softened as he closed his fingers over mine, a silent promise passing between us. The uncle's mouth opened to protest, but it was too late. "You've already lost," the CEO said, his tone final, "because she's not afraid of you anymore." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the knowledge that everything had changed. And for the first time, I felt a surge of something I had never truly known, power. Not over them, but over myself. I wasn't just his wife. I was finally me,